Hello everyone, welcome to AITAREYA Institute. So, success in civil services does not come from reading more news. It comes from analyzing the right news in the right way. So, let's begin today's current affairs discussion with a clear focus on concepts, context, and an exam-oriented analysis. Okay, so we'll be covering everything in detail. Okay, so first topic of discussion is artificial intelligence. Okay, give me a second here. So what we will be doing is artificial intelligence in courts. Overview of the draft regulations 2026 has been released. So Supreme Court of India's AI committee, so this is your AI committee, has drafted the regulations for use of artificial intelligence in courts 2026. So it is a unified structural and ethical policy framework. Okay, so essentially what we all will also be focusing, where can you also use this news article, is your papers on ethics. Okay, so the focus is on creating an ethical policy framework. Okay, so the framework will govern, optimize, and safely regulate the integration of AI tools across India's entire judicial spectrum, from right up till from district courts to the Supreme Court. Okay, so the entire spectrum would be covered. Okay, so the regulation aims to harness technology's efficiency. Okay, technologies, which technology? Obviously, the artificial intelligence. How can you gain from it? You have to gain from it, but by preserving the integrity, fairness, and humane character, not just humane character of judicial decision making. So the idea behind this is what is the idea behind this? Is create the focus should be on the people. The idea is that focus should be on the people. Okay, you should not ignore the people. This is the entire idea. This is why the focus is on integrity, fairness, and human character, so that justice is served duly. And you must have heard about in the polity, you must have heard about due process, due process of law, due process of law. So for it to be possible, what you need is ethical policy framework. Okay, so this draft is a landmark attempt to define the boundary between AI as a tool and AI as a decision maker. So mind you, what the idea is to use it as a tool and not solely rely on it being a decision maker, because here people are being involved. Okay, so an artificial intelligence cannot decide the lives, the future of the people. Okay, and all of this should be done within the constitutional framework of India. That is sacrosanct. Okay, so what will be the key pillars? Key pillars of the draft AI regulation framework: human adjudicative primacy. Okay, human adjudicative primacy. What it means is no judgment, order, or finding of fact law can be reached by algorithmic decision making alone. So essentially what it is saying is you can use artificial intelligence, you can use its algorithm, but you cannot rely solely on the artificial intelligence. Okay, there has to be some human brain behind the decision. Okay, so this word is alone. That should not be done. Okay, so AI outputs remain strictly advisory. AI can only advise and will always remain subservient to the independent human evaluation. Okay, so it should not be that AI is dominating the decision making. Okay, apex regulatory body, a permanent full-time apex body at the Supreme Court to lead governance. A body will be created for this purpose. It will comprise of Supreme Court and High Court judges, meaty officials, and cyber finance experts. Mandatory impact assessment will be undertaken. So comprehensive technical and ethical impact assessment before any tool is deployed, that will also be undertaken by this apex regulatory body. So what will be evaluating is data sourcing, from where the data is being sourced, cyber security, and a focus will also be on cyber security, explainability, and risk of hallucinations. Okay, so now you must, this is an issue that arises when you have artificial intelligence. Okay, so that also needs to be reduced. Okay. Vendor accountability. So someone has to be placed accountable if something goes south. Okay, so this is why the Supreme Court has placed the accountability on the private vendors. So private vendors are barred from using. They will not be using the judicial data to train proprietary algorithms. Now, this is where it becomes very, very tricky, because essentially what the private vendors want, they want to make profit. This is their agenda, profit. How will they make profit? By making their systems more effective, by making their artificial intelligence more effective and efficient. How will you make the artificial intelligence more efficient and effective? By training it with better algorithms. How will you train it with better algorithms? Through data. Data. This is why this has been said time and again, that data is the new oil. Remember this quote. You can use this quote in your essays. You can use this quote in your essays. You can use this quote in your mains answers. Okay, data is the new oil. So vendor cannot claim exclusive IP rights, intellectual property right, over the tools built for the public judicial resources. Okay, so all in all, this draft AI regulation becomes very important for you can use all these points in your mains answers. And there have been questions previously in mains on artificial intelligence. There will be question again on artificial intelligence in the future mains as well. Okay, moving forward. Operational safeguards. What are the operational safeguards with regards to your testing, transparency, and litigant rights? So, controlled environment testing will be undertaken. Okay, controlled environment testing will be undertaken. So, high risk systems, if you have a system which is very risky, then it needs to undergo time limited testing in isolated sandbox setups. Now, whenever you see this term sandbox, sandbox setup, it essentially means the system will be kept isolated, and then in isolation it will be tested. So trial runs in sandboxing, what we mean is trial runs will be undertaken. Okay, before actual full-blown code deployment, sandbox setups will be undertaken for all these high risky system tools. Okay, next is public AI register and incident database will be created. So every court must maintain an updated public AI register and an internal AI incident database to track. Why this register will be created? To track all the errors and anomalies. Why do we need to track all the errors and anomaly? So that we can improve, so that we can hold people accountable. We can create a trajectory of the events that has happened, or the future events, possible future events that could happen. So it's like a safeguard mechanism in order to improve the systems. See? Third is emergency fallback protocols. Okay, so every high court must maintain a verified manual. So this is where it becomes very important. Manual. So it will not be automatic. Fallback protocol. Every high court will have a protocol to ensure uninterrupted justice delivery in the event of any AI platform failure. Okay. So this is becomes in case in a future scenario erupts where you have your AI starts failing, your AI does not perform optimally, let's say, you know, and the basic idea behind the judiciary is, you know, effective justice delivery. If the court is not unable to dispense justice, if the court is unable to dispense justice effectively, then through this AI tool, then it will fall back towards the earlier systems. So it will have a fallback protocol. Okay. Third is fourth is mandatory litigant notification. So courts are legally bound to inform the litigants whenever approved AI application provides material assistance to a judge. So what the judiciary is doing is making the citizens informed that your case your case did use AI application as an assistance to the judge. So if let's say anything does not fit into the scheme of things of the people or the litigant, or he feels that the justice is not properly dispensed, then he can file a further appeal. Okay, the litigant, if he feels that because of this artificial intelligence tool there are certain errors in the judgment that is provided, so he can further appeal that. Okay, why appeal that? So that he gets fair and impartial justice. The idea is fair and impartial justice. Okay, and that is why the courts are have to be legally bound to tell the litigant that indeed an AI application was used in your case. So this the court is duty bound to tell. And last but not the least, grievance redressal mechanism. And as always, the basic idea behind any governance system or any judicial system is whether the grievances of the litigants or the people, that is ensured. Okay, so any litigant which is harmed by harmed by prohibited AI use may file an immediate application for formal hearing and remedial protection in deploying court. So if any litigant feels that the AI use that has been undertaken in his case, that was prohibited, that was not allowed, so he can file an immediate instant application and for a formal hearing or any remedial protection to the deploying court, and the court is duty bound to listen because the AI use was prohibited, and still in that case the AI was used in his case, so that has gone against the litigant. And this is why grievance redressal mechanism becomes very important. Next, absolute prohibitions. What are the absolute prohibitions on AI use? On AI use in quotes. What AI can never do? No algorithmic adjudication. Very, very important point. So AI cannot function as an independent adjudicator or sentencing system without mandatory human in the loop architecture. So in any judgment, in any case, AI cannot be the sole adjudicator. AI will only be used as a supporting tool, supporting tool, and it always must have a mandatory human involvement in the architecture. Okay, so any judgment cannot be solely made by the artificial intelligence. That is the first thing, very important thing. Okay. Ban on behavioral risk scoring. Ban on behavioral risk scoring. So AI, behavioral risk scoring. AI cannot calculate numerical risk scores to estimate flight risk, evaluate bail eligibility, or predict future behavior of accused individuals. This is a very sensitive topic, since this is a thing which the judicial system is most afraid of, that if people start using the artificial intelligence to understand whether the person is a flight risk or not, whether the person is eligible for a bail or not, and the worst thing, do predicting future of a person, future behavior of the accused individuals. Now this is very important. A lot of discussions in the entire world happens because of this. So, if based on past experiences, you start judging the person for his future, so essentially, what you are dividing the person is of a free will, the idea of free will. So, if your past experiences are the thing that decides your future, then the person has no free will. So, if based on the past, the AI is predicting and scoring the person and estimating the future behavior of the accused individuals, then what you are dividing of that person is that very basic humane fundamental thing which is referred as your free will. Please do remember this. And third point is no black box systems. So unexplainable software with hidden decision logic is strictly barred in high-risk legal matters which may affect personal liberty. है ना? Personal liberty is a constitutional provision under Article 21. ठीक है? So no such black box system. What do you mean by black box system? Any any software which has a hidden decision logic and it is not outrightly visible, but the back end algorithm is such, you know, that is not explained outrightly to the judicial system, but that is hidden. So such kind of black box systems will not be allowed. What are the certain another additional prohibitions? Ban on continuous surveillance. So AI tools cannot monitor the judicial officers, advocates, or the litigants within or in connection with the court premises. So such kind of continuous surveillance, which I am sure you must be reading about this, that across the world, now this is happening, that continuous surveillance of people is happening, especially if they are associated with a case. No undisclosed AI evidence. Okay, so parties are completely barred from submitting AI generated outputs, text, or synthetic documents as evidence. So you cannot develop evidence which is AI generated, like your output, text, or synthetic documents, that cannot be used as an evidence without fully disclosing their AI assisted origin. So you can only do that. You have to first tell that whatever output you have provided, whatever text or synthetic document you have provided, that is the origin is AI assisted. Only then you will be able to use that. Without that, that should not be done. For instance, let's say you have an AI tool, and you have an AI tool, and you have certain, let's say evidences. You have certain evidences and a certain raw evidences. You feed into this AI tool, and this new properly arranged set of evidence is produced. The output is produced. Now this output is not allowed in the code. That is not allowed. Okay. So these prohibitions collectively protect. What do they protect? The fundamental rights from algorithmic bias and preserve the human core of justice delivery. Okay. So the entire idea here is preserving the fundamental rights of the people, which is constitutionally enshrined under Article 19. Okay. So this thing you have to remember. Okay. Article 19. I'm sure you must be well aware of this. Okay. Moving forward. Now comes the significance. How can AI strengthen India's judiciary? The idea is to strengthen and support India's judicial system. Now, first and foremost thing is minimize the case backlogs. This will be the first area where it will be used. How come? So you will have automated case filing management and detect any scrutiny. So all this will be detected. Why? And automated case management and any scrutiny will be detected to speed up. The entire idea is to speed up the administrative workflows and clear any bottlenecks that are present in the judicial system. So that is the first priority thing. Second is optimizing resources. So you will have advanced tools. Advanced tools, what will be they used for? What will be they be used for? Judicial performance. It will evaluate judicial performance. It will identify any systemic delays. So any bottlenecks, delays, and it will enable data-driven docket prioritization. So all this main idea is to optimize the resources. And third is multilingual accessibility. Multilingual accessibility. Now this point is very important. Why? So validated translation will be undertaken. Applications which will convert complex judgments into regional vernacular languages. Why? Now this will enable that the judgments are accessible to the local people in their local language. Okay. Supporting inclusion. So all this will include inclusivity. So whenever you have a question on inclusivity, try to include this point. Okay. Very, very important point. Precision legal research. Okay. So automated retrieval. Precedent retrieval means if you have an earlier case. So there was a similar case earlier. Similar case earlier. So that can be accessed very easily. Okay. So for precedent retrieval, it will be used for summarization. So since you must be knowing that the judicial documents are very, very lengthy, very lengthy. Even lawyers struggle to do, understand them. Even forget about lawyers. There have been cases. There, I think, PI case. There was a famous PI case. So a big bench was organized just in order to understand that judgment as to what the judgment has said. Another, five, if I'm able to remember it correctly, uh, a five-member bench was enacted just to understand what the judgment has said. That it was so complex. So summarization is very important, and obviously citation verification. If in any judgment or any pronouncement, if there are any citations, you are quoting something, any judgment or any other things, you are citing something, then you are able to verify it very quickly. That can be done easily through AI. So this will significantly reduce the manual research hours that the judges and the staff have to undertake. So all these points are very, very important for speeding up the judicial process. Courtroom inclusivity, very, very important point. So speech to text will be done. है ना? Presently we have people. who do this. Now that can be automated very easily. Automated transcription. If judge is saying something, if another party is saying something, then that could be easily transcripted. Okay. You will have visual assistant interfaces and a visual assistant interfaces in order, let's say, if you have any any case which involves, let's say, murder, so you'll be able to recreate that instance, that case, very easily in order to understand what has actually happened in the case, rather than for the lawyers to explain it orally. You will have visual assistance interface. So this will expand equitable access for specially abled litigants. Okay, so the idea is specially abled litigants and lawyers will be able to understand and take part in the judicial process if you have all such tools available at their behest. Okay, moving forward. Next topic of discussion is biogas. Biogas and India's energy security architecture. So why biogas is very important? Because India is a developing nation with close to 1.5 billion population, which will be associated with a lot of biomass. Now, this population will be releasing a lot of biomass. So, this biomass could be effectively converted into biogas, thereby ensuring India's energy architecture. Now, why this becomes very important and pertinent in our discussions right now is because due to escalating West Asian conflict. So we have the West Asian conflicts, and which has threatened the LPG imports. And 90% of the LPG import, 90, do remember this point, you can use it in your mains, transits through the Strait of Hormuz. Very, very important. Strait of Hormuz. Why? Because of the ongoing skirmishes or conflicts between Iran and USA and even Israel. Because of all this becomes very important. The Strait of Hormuz is impacted. Strait of Hormuz is regulated by Iran. So what is your homework? Your homework is to go demarcate exactly where is Strait of Hormuz. That could be asked in your prelims. Okay. So Government of India has urgently renewed its focus on domestic energy alternatives. So India relies on presently what we rely on foreign markets to fulfill approximately how much needs? 85% of our total domestic crude oil demand is fulfilled through exports, through imports. Okay, so that is why it becomes very important for energy diversification, for strategic national interests. Okay, and not only this, that we are dependent on others. Another factor is it impacts our current account deficit, which impacts our balance of payment, which impacts our forex reserves. I'm sure you must have read about the 1991 LPG crisis, LPG reforms, which were undertaken precisely because of the deficiency of forex reserves. Okay, so this is why what we need is energy security. We need to become energy independent nation. We need to have sovereignty in energy decisions. So biogas could be a good tool in order to assist our energy security architecture. So biogas, when processed and purified, yields, what does it yield? Very important, compressed biogas, CBG. Now this CBG is chemically identical to the CNG, compressed natural gas. Okay. How so? Majority of its component is methane. Methane, which is CH4. Okay, you have to remember this. Okay, so biogas, you can produce biogas after processing and purifying it. You will obtain CBG, which is chemically identical to the fossil derived CNG, compressed natural gas. Okay, so another thing that you have to remember in this process, there was a question that was asked around gasification. One second. Another thing that you have to remember is with regards to your gasification. What is this process of gasification? So you have air dried biomass. Air dried biomass. Now this air dried biomass, this is burnt under controlled amount of oxygen, in the presence of oxygen. This is burnt. This is burnt, partial combustion. Now this produces syngas. Syngas, which is also known as producer gas. Syngas or producer gas, which can be used where? In transport sector, in electricity generation, even in production of fertilizers. Okay. Moreover, what is left of after this entire process? Another one thing, that one residue which is left is biochar. Is biochar. Okay. So from this gasification plant, biochar is left. Now this can also be a source of heat. And for instance, this could be used for cooking. So biochar uh, is very important, which could be also utilized apart from utilizing your syngas. So biochar stores carbon, prevents its escape into the atmosphere if not used for cooking. So biochar can be used as a fertilizer, though it is harmful to earthworms. So I would not advise using it as a fertilizer. है ना? And syngas, there have been questions on syngas. What is that? That syngas is generally is a mixture of carbon monoxide, carbon monoxide plus hydrogen. But not only this, but also carbon dioxide and methane. The primary components are carbon monoxide and hydrogen, but you also have carbon dioxide along with methane. So this composition was asked in your prelims exam. Okay. So internal, you have your IC engines, internal combustion engines also run on this syngas. Okay. So how is biogas formed? So the production process, first you have an anaerobic digestion happens. Okay, one second. So you have anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic, what does anaerobic means? Anaerobic essentially means that without oxygen, you don't, without the oxygen, this is anaerobic digestion will be happening. Then hydrolysis and acidogenesis will happen. Then methanogenesis. In this process, methane will be created, methanogenesis. Okay. Hydrolysis basically using water to break. Okay. Then cryogenic. What does cryogenic? Scrubbing and compression. Cryogenic means at very low temperature. Whenever you read this term, cryogenic, at very, very extremely low temperature for scrubbing and compression. So the biological conversion happens of the organic waste. Do remember this, not of inorganic waste. So let's say if the examiner wants to confuse you, it will simply replace the word organic with the word inorganic. So in this entire process, what will happen is your organic waste, like your animal manure, agricultural residues, your food waste, even your sewage, all this will be converted into methane gas, in strictly oxygen-free conditions. Whenever you have methanogenesis, that can only generally happens without oxygen, because what we are doing is we are encouraging partial, combustion. ठीक है, not complete combustion. So after methanogenesis stage, this raw gas is scrubbed to remove the carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide moisture. Okay, so last stage, what happens is apart from carbon dioxide, you also have other elements like carbon dioxide. Apart from methane, you also have carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide plus moisture. Okay, so all this will be removed in this stage. Now you will have pure methane. You will have pure methane content over the composition will be over 90%. And this is how you can use this methane. Now this will be used as compressed biogas. So composition of CNG is also same. CNG also has methane. More than 90% of the CNG is methane. Okay. So this is the entire production process. So these are certain key statistics around the biogas sector. Import dependency we have already discussed. India's reliance on foreign energy markets for total domestic crude oil demand. Okay, remember this point, by heart this point. And these are rough figures, but you have to remember this and use it in your means. And 11.7% feedstock price CAGR. CAGR is compound annual growth rate for administered maize-based biofuel prices. So this was the price rise with regards to your maize-based biofuel prices. So yes, this is though I would not advise you to learn this figure. 50 lakh Govardhan grant. Even if you don't remember 50 lakh, you have to use this point. Govardhan grant. Government provides Govardhan grant. You can use it in your mains. So capital grants per district under the waste to wealth scheme. There is a scheme which is run by government, waste to wealth scheme for community scale biogas structures. In this, 50 lakh Govardhan grant is provided to the community scale biogas structures. Okay. Pipeline allocation earmarked specifically to set up pipeline infrastructure to inject rural biogas into the national gas grid. Okay, so if you are producing CBG or gas, it could be integrated to the national gas grid. This is why creating a pipeline infrastructure becomes very crucial. So you don't need to remember this figure. You just have to remember that a certain amount, a good amount is allocated for establishing the pipeline infrastructure. Okay, moving forward, but there are certain challenges. And this topic is important. In the means, this you will have to include all these points. So I have created and curated all these points such that you can use it directly in your means. So biomass supply chain friction. So you need to smoothen. You have to make the supply chain seamless. So gathering in this biogas, what is the supply chain? So first you have to gather the crop residues from different fragmented holdings. Now this is vulnerable. Why? Because of the transport delays and weather disruptions. Okay. So issue is the cost of collection is very high. And now collecting this crop residues from individual farmers, the cost is very high. And lack of specialized biomass balers have led to stalling of these private sector installations. Okay, so transport cost, first and foremost thing is reduce the transport delays, and the most important thing is transport delays. Now this is how you can smoothen the supply chain friction. So this is a challenge which we need to address. Second is distortions to food security. Now this is very important. Ongoing discussions on this. Why? Because high administered prices for feedstock crops encourage single crop farming, encourage monocropping, and this threatens biodiversity. What it means is for a specific crop, one second, for a specific crop, you have created a system, an administered price. Okay, the feedstock from this will be priced at, let's say, rupees 100 per kg. So first thing first, that everyone will then try to grow this crop, not because that is suitable or that is in the demand by the people, but because an assured price will be provided by the government. and governmental agencies. So all this will promote monocropping, and this will threaten the biodiversity. Okay? How come? Because you don't have diversity of crops, only one singular crop. So here we can see that maize-derived fuel pricing has created challenges for pulse and oil seeds. Very, very important. Pulse, you know, dalhan. So these pulses, there have been instances where despite being the largest producer of pulses, we have become, I think it was FY16, where we became the largest importer of pulses. Oil seeds, we are an importer of oil seeds. Okay, why? And this is creating further issues, this entire scenario, because now people are shifting towards maize. Maize is that crop for which administered price is provided. Okay, so that has led to the reduction in production and cultivation of pulses and oil seeds, and outputs to drop, forcing India to import more edible oils. Third is high capital entry barriers. So for this, corrosion resistant, what you require is corrosion resistant purification system. Now all this requires initial investment, which is difficult for the small enterprises. Very, very small enterprise, they cannot afford that upfront one-time investment, the initial investment, that is the capital is very high. So the idea behind was the rural areas, develop rural areas based on this. But in the rural areas, you have small enterprises, but they are unable to afford the initial investment for these projects. So many rural projects are stalled due to difficulties in securing formal credit or long technical verification loops. So these are small farmers, and in economics, you must have read about that if you have a small enterprise or you are a small farmer, that then what the bank assesses you is that you have higher risk. Why higher risk? Because you will not be unable to repay the loan. And since you have higher risk, the interest rate the bank will impose will generally be higher, or they will not even, or the worst case scenario, they will not provide you the credit. Okay, so what they will do is then they will move towards the informal credits, the sahukars, which have enormously high interest rate. So that puts the small farmers, the small enterprises in a vicious loop of poverty. Okay. Fourth challenge is shortage of grid connectivity, which we have already discussed. Most rural biogas plants are built far from the main gas trunk lines, making pipelines transport prohibitively expensive. And this we have already discussed. Transportation. That is why the government started creating allocated roughly 1,000 crore for establishing the pipeline infrastructure, so that all the gas that is produced from these biogas can be connected with the national gas grid. So several functional units must rely on costly physical truck transport. And a truck transport is costly as a substitute for grid injection, because you don't have an effective pipeline system which connects through these rural areas. So this is yet another big challenge that the government is trying to address. Next is Supreme Court backlog clearing initiative has been launched. So Supreme Court has constituted four benches to exclusively hear the oldest. Now they are starting from the back, civil and criminal cases under Chief Justice of India, Surikant's strategic reform agenda. Now there will be two division benches, and when we say division benches, what you mean is it will be comprising of two judges. Now they will exclusively hear the oldest civil cases, including matters pending since 1986, and focus solely on criminal matters dating back to 1991. So there have been cases which go as back, as far as 1986, 99. Can you even imagine that before you maybe even born, before I was born? Okay. So even though I'm laughing and smiling, I'm stunned as to how come this possible. Okay. So this is why this becomes a very important initiative in order to dispense justice for such people. So, the famous saying, justice delayed is justice denied. Okay? Justice delayed is justice denied. So the special benches will function on Tuesday. There have been days allocated for this, designed as non-miscellaneous days, ensuring uninterrupted and sustained judicial attention to such complex legacy disputes. So, by exempting these benches from routine miscellaneous hearing, those benches will not hear on those days, routine miscellaneous hearings. Judges will devolve their full attention to cases which have very, very lengthy arguments and final disposal without repeated adjournments. Now, this is the main issue with such lengthy argument cases. Repeated adjournments, तारीख पे तारीख, as the famously said, तारीख पे तारीख मिलती है. Okay. So solutions adopted across CGI tenures. So this was just under UU Lalit, and introduced separate time slots for fresh cases and long pending cases, pending regular matters, to prevent older cases from being perpetually neglected. Dedicated time was created for such long pending regular cases, for long pending regular matters. Then came your very famous Chandrachud. He launched a Supreme Court SC Judy Care Project. SC Judy Care Project. You can use this in your mains. So automated case classification will be done, and grouping of similar legal questions for collective hearings. All this will speed up the process. Third, now present CGI Surikant, he has created 4 special benches and deployed special lok adalats and thematic benches to accelerate the disposal of such legacy cases which have been pending since 1986 and criminal cases since 1991. Okay. Next is NIDAR 2.1. NIDAR 2.1. What is this? It is National Innovative Challenge for Drone Application and Research. Okay. So NIDAR 2.1, 2.0 is a premier national level innovation hackathon. This was launched by METI in partnership with Drone Federation of India as a flagship platform under the SWAYAN Capacity Building Initiative. SWAYAN, है ना? Just like Swarajya, है ना? Swarajya. Similarly, SWAYAN, self-yan, है ना? Created by India. In order to create Atmanirbhar India, Make in India, just like Make in India, as a part of it, you have launched the Swayan Capacity Building Initiative. The challenge moves beyond basic pre-built airframes, focusing on indigenous avionics. Now, avionics for such drones will be created in India in itself. So, mind you, whenever you see such topics where it is mentioned indigenous, please create certain separate notes of it. Not in this case, but in other cases. Secure drone operating intelligence and microchip integration using the Vega microprocessor which is designed by CDAP. Okay, you don't need to remember the details of it. Top 100 selected items receive 2 free Vega processor development kits to prototype their solution with a total pool price of over 65. So a great amount of prize money has been allocated so that they are able to further develop their ideas effectively. Okay. The overarching goal is to create a self-reliant domestic drone industry. Okay. Self-reliant domestic drone industry by transitioning India from Presently, what we are doing is we are assembling drones. We are purchasing parts from different locations, particularly China, and then creating our drone. So the idea would be to build the drone from the scratch, which will include all the indigenous products, as we have just seen. Okay, to manufacture drones intelligence, its brain entirely within the country. This is the entire idea. है ना? So there was, है ना, one thing you have to also remember is uh, this topic becomes very important with regards to your defense sector. Okay, for instance, you have your indigenous stealth drone, or UCAV, unmanned, and you must have heard about UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. This is unmanned combat aerial vehicles. Okay, so India has moved towards this. For instance, your Ghatak. Remember this Ghatak. Ghatak is it's an armed stealth drone program, and it is built under an armed stealth drone program. There's a program called Aura. Okay, what is Aura? And you must have heard about this one. Aura, autonomous, autonomous unmanned research aircraft. Under this, we have created Ghatak drones. Okay, so Aura is described as a self-defending, high-speed reconnaissance UAV, unarmed aerial vehicle with a weapon firing capability. So in this, UCAV has been designed and developed by the aeronautical developed by aeronautical development. Okay, so it was established. All such things are established under DRDO. Okay, and another thing, one more term that was in news was very important is your kamikaze drones. Kamikaze drones. So what are kamikaze drones? So these drones are very small. These are very small drones. These are unmanned aircraft that are packed with explosives that can be flown directly at a tank or a group of troops that are destroyed when it hits the target and explodes. So these are small drones. They hit the target and then they explode. That is why the term kamikaze drones. है ना? They're also called as switchblade drones, as their blade-like wings spring out during the launch time. And the army has prepared, as envisaged, to induct such kamikaze drones in eastern Ladakh. Okay? So these are some of the things that you have to remember. Okay. So the competition was undertaken. Nidar 2.1, 2.0, sorry. So this happened, and two competition tracks. Track 1 system level, build fully autonomous swarm drones for disaster. Idea is disaster zone survival location. Develop GPS denied navigation for confined industrial space. And a self-explanatory. Track 2 is not only at the system level, but also building hardware level. So you will be building an indigenous flight controller and an autopilot system using the open standard Vega microprocessor, which was built by CDAC. Okay. So this, you don't need to remember this. Just remember that uh, at both the levels we are working, at the system level, the software level, as well as the hardware level. Okay. So Swayan initiative, do remember this. This was approved. This started in 2022. And it's a hub and spoke model for premier institutions, which includes your IISc, IITs, NITs, and all this. Organizes training under 5 themes. What are those 5 themes? Aero mechanics, drone electronics, GNC algorithms, drone application, and allied UAS technologies. These are the areas where training will be provided under this Swayan initiative. Has successfully trained more than 51,000 individuals across various skill levels to fulfill the workforce needs of India's expanding drone structure. So a lot of skilling is being undertaken under this Swayan initiative. Okay, so I hope you liked today's discussion of current affairs, which we did in quite a depth. Okay, if you have any doubts, please do mention in the comment section itself. And see, we are especially picking and choosing certain topics which could be utilized, since mains is coming, which could be utilized in your mains preparation as well. Okay. Okay, then see you tomorrow.